there, welcome to our lesson here on slope and graphing lines. I am going to primarily use this formula for slope. By the way, if you want a copy of the note sheet here, feel free to look in the description. I have posted a link there where you can download your own copy, print it out if you want to follow along. But I'm going to be using this formula for slope, and I'm going to show through these examples here how we find all of these pieces, y1, y2, x1, x2, okay? So when we look at a set of ordered pairs, we see that we have an x value, then a y value. And if it is the first set of ordered pair, then that is the first x, we call that x1, and the first y, we call that y1. And so second ordered pair would be x2 and y2. So now we have these values that are going to go in our formula. Okay, so let's substitute those. Y2 would be 8 minus y1 would be 2. X2 would be 4 minus x1 is negative 6. Be real careful there that's minus negative 6. Now, we deal with minus a negative by changing the sign to an addition, but only if we change the sign of the next number. So now we can go ahead and subtract. 8 minus 2 is 6. 4 plus 6 is 10, and we get 6/10. Now, both 6 and 10 are divisible by 2. So we're going to go ahead and divide both the top and the bottom by 2. And that gives me 3/5 as my slope. So I hope you can see in that one how we pick out what y2 and y1 are, what x2 and x1 are. Let's do the next one. We will, let's identify these as x1 and y1, x2 and y2. And now we'll make our substitutions. So y2 here is negative 3 minus y1, which is also negative 3. Watch the minus and negative there. And then x2 is negative 1 minus x1 is 2. Just like we did before, we'll change that subtraction to an addition and change the sign of the next number there. So negative 3 plus positive 3, that is 0. And let's do the same on the bottom here. We'll change that to addition by changing the sign of the next number. So negative 1 plus negative 2 is negative 3. And 0 divided by negative 3 is 0. So we get a slope of 0, which is okay. All right. Let's do one more. In our third example here, again, x1, y1, x2, y2. And let's make our substitutions. So y2 is 6 minus y1, which is negative 3. x2 is 2 minus x1 is also 2. So we'll go ahead and make that change, changing that to an addition and change the sign of the next number. So on the top, we have 6 plus 3, which is 9. And on the bottom, we have 2 minus 2, which is 0. Now, interesting. Over here, we had 0 divided by a number, and we got 0. This time, we have a number divided by 0. That is undefined. Cannot divide by 0. So this is undefined slope. Now, you may be saying, what does that mean for us? Well, let's take a look at, in these boxes here, I want to draw just a general shape of lines that have a positive slope first. So a positive slope leans to the right. I'm going to just use this little protractor here as a straight edge. So positive slopes lean to the right. Negative slopes then lean to the left. Zero slopes are horizontal. And undefined slopes, you might guess, are vertical. Okay. And I want those for your notes because I get a lot of questions like, oh, it says undefined slope. What does that mean? Well, here's what I like to help students remember. This looks like an exclamation point to me. So this is, oh no, no slope. Helps me remember that that is a vertical line when I have an undefined slope. All right. Now, as far as formulas for lines go, there are two. There's actually a third one, but we're only going to deal with two of them right now. So the first one you may have heard before. It's y equals mx plus b. And the reason it's kind of a big deal, and you may have heard it before, is because m represents the slope and b represents the y-intercept. So anytime I can get an equation of a line into y equals on one side and everything else on the other side, becomes really nice because I can just look right there in front of x and tell you what the slope is. And I can look at whatever's being added or subtracted and tell you what the y-intercept is. I don't have that luxury in standard form. Standard form isn't solved y equals, so I can't just look at it and tell you the slope unless I know the formula for that. And so when you're in standard form, your slope is negative a over b. Negative a over b. And your y-intercept is c over b. But in order for these to work, you have to make sure it's in standard form, which means x and y are on the same side of the equation. So look here at number 4. I want you to see that this is in slope-intercept form. How do I know that? Well, because it has y equal all by itself on one side of the equation, everything else on the other side. So once I identify it's in slope-intercept form, then I can go ahead and tell you right there in front of x, that's my slope, negative 1/2. And whatever's being added or subtracted is my y-intercept, that's 2. Now, you may say, Dr. May, how do you then tell how to graph it? Well, you always start with the y-intercept. So I'm going to go on the y-axis and I'm going to go to 2. 1, 2. And I'm going to put a point there. Now, then from there, I'm going to use my slope. You may have heard your slope referred to as rise over run. So when I see a slope of negative 1/2, that means I'm going to go negative 1 in the rise direction and 2 in the run direction. Or that means I'm going to go down 1 because of the negative and right 2 because the bottom is positive. So I'm going to start right here at my y-intercept and I'm going down 1, right 2. Do it again. Down 1, right 2. One more time. Down 1, right 2. When I'm graphing a line on paper, I'll do 2 or 3, 4 points so I can get them lined up really good for my straight edge. And I just keep using that slope over and over again. Now let's look at another way. And this one will deal with standard form. So I want you to see on this one that the x and the y are on the same side of the equation. So that lets me know I'm in standard form. You have a couple of options here. If you want to do the formula negative a over b, you can. You can do your slope as negative a over b. So negative a, remember that in the standard form, the a is the value in front of x. I'm going to rewrite it so it's easier to see. So my slope when I'm dealing in standard form is negative a. So that means I have negative 3. Tricky, tricky. Watch both of those negatives there. Divided by b, which is 4. So negative is positive 3/4. Okay. And then my y-intercept is c over b. No negative needed. So c is 24 and b is 4. So my y-intercept is 6. Okay, so let's look at starting on my y-intercept. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I want you to see my rise over run. Okay, so since they're positive, this means to go up 3, right 4. But I also want to tell you, you could do the opposite of both. You could go down 3 and left 4. You can do both as long as you change both directions. So let's see. We'll do the up and right part first. So from here, up 3, 1, 2, 3, right 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's do the down version because I want you to see it lines up. We'll go down 3, 1, 2, 3, left 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And we line those up. And you can see then my line is graphed. Again, use it coming from a different form, coming from the standard form there. Okay. Number 6 here asks us to use the intercept method. Okay, so you'll notice here when we're in standard form, sometimes it's easier to plot the intercepts. So let's write some notes for ourselves. To find the x-intercept, we sub 0 for y. So in my equation, I'm going to replace the y with a 0. It'll look something like this. 3x plus 5 times 0 equals 15. 5 times 0 is 0. So I got 3x equals 15. Now I can divide both sides by 3 and I get x equals 5. So I'm going to go on the x-axis and I'm going to plot at 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, since this is the x-axis. Okay. Now to do the y-intercept, similarly, we will sub 0 for x. So now in place of the x, I put a 0. So 3 times 0 plus 5y equals 15. Well, 3 times 0 is 0, and we get 5y equals 15. Just like before, we can divide by 5, and I get y equals 3. So I'm going to go on the y-axis this time and up to 3. 1, 2, 3. So now with those intercepts, we have 2 points that we can line up and we can draw our graph, our line. See, in order to draw a line, you need at least 2 points. And the intercepts here give you those 2 points to work from. Okay, so let's look at 7. We'll use the same method. So for the x-intercept, we're going to sub 0 for y. So that'll give me 12x plus 8 times 0 equals 16. So now I got 12x equals 16, and then I can divide both sides by 12. Now, the downside of this one is that we don't get a nice number, right? So when I come on the x-axis, I've got to kind of approximate where that 4/3 would be. We'll do the same for the y-intercept. We'll sub 0 for x. And so I get 12 times 0 plus 8y equals 16. So that gives me 8y equals 16. And then I divide by 8 so that I get y equals 2. So I'm going on the y-axis at 2. And again, the intercept method it's not perfect, but it does give us those 2 points we need to then graph our line. All right, so what I want to do next is I want to go the other way, okay? I want to give us the information we need and we want to write the equation. So you'll notice in these, we started with the equation and we found the information and we graphed. Now I want to start with the graph and hey, let's write an equation for these. And again, if you want a copy of the notes here, just in the description, I have put a link that you can download a copy for yourself. Okay, so in this one, we're going to be doing slope-intercept form. Remember, that's y equals mx plus b. So I need the slope. So the first thing I'm going to do is start at one of these points, and I'm going to do my rise and run, okay? So my rise, notice I have to go down. Remember, that's down. Let's see, 1, 2. And then I went right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we went right 5. So what does that mean? Down is negative. So we got -2 and right is positive fifths. Okay. Now the other piece we need is the y-intercept. So look at your graph. Where does it touch the y-axis? Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it looks like my b value here is 7. Then what we need to do is to take our m and put it in the equation, our b and put it in the equation. And it looks like I'm going to get y equals -2/5 x. Notice I put the slope right there in front of x. And then I'm going to add the y-intercept. Okay. And that's how I can read it from a graph. Now, number 9 here, we're going to do the same thing, but then we're going to have to go a step further to get it in standard form. Okay. So let's do that slope again. Okay. We'll do our rise and our run. From here, my rise is 1, 2, 3, up 3. 1, 2, 3, and right 1. So up is positive, right is positive. So my slope is 3. Okay. My y-intercept is 1, 2, 3, down 4. So my y-intercept is -4 there. Now let's put our m, our b into the slope-intercept form. Y equals 3x minus 4. Now you'll remember this is slope-intercept form. We want standard form, which looks like this. So standard form, x and y are on the same side of the equation. So I'm going to move this 3x over here by subtracting it. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. That's going to look like -3x plus y equals -4, which would be okay, but standard form usually likes this number in front of x to be positive. So friends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything in here by a -1. So -1 times -3 is +3. -1 times y is -y, and -1 times -4 is +4. So you can write your standard form here as 3x minus y equals +4 there. Okay. And again, I want you to see that we use the same process that we did over here. We just had to go a few steps further so that we can get it in standard form. Okay, so the next few that I want to look at are going to do the same thing, but we don't have to read the information from a graph. So look at number 10. We're told the slope is -1/2. The y-intercept is 6. Okay, we don't have to read that from a graph. We're just told it, but we want it in standard form. That's important. So let's make our substitutions. We know what m is, so we'll do y equals -1/2 x. And we know what b is, that's +6, but we want them in standard form, okay? So let's get all the x's and y's on one side. So I'll add this 1/2 x here. And that gives me 1/2 x plus y equals 6. Now, another thing about standard form you need to know, x and y have to be on the same side and there can't be any fractions. So in order to get rid of this fraction here, I'm going to multiply the whole thing by 2. Every term in here gets multiplied by 2. So 1/2 times 2 is 1. Y times 2, 2y. 6 times 2, 12. And now I have it in standard form. Okay, so let's recap. Standard form is x and y have to be on the same side. See that from the formula. And no fractions. No fractions. Okay, so let's look at number 11. We're told m, and we're told it passes through 4, 2. Okay, so and we want slope-intercept form. So we know we're working with this one. Okay, so let's substitute our m. We know y equals 1/3 x plus b. Problem is we don't know b. But I want you to recognize in an ordered pair, we know x and we know y. So let's substitute to find b. So in place of x, I'm going to put 4. In place of y, I'm going to put 2. And we can solve for b now. So 1/3 times 4 is 4/3. Now I'm going to subtract 4/3 from both sides. Ooh, a little fraction work here. 2 is 6/3 minus 4/3. So that gives me 2/3 for b. Now, that's not my answer. My answer is the equation, but I need the value of b in there. So my answer is 1/3, y equals 1/3 x plus 2/3. Okay, so good work there on finding b, but making sure that I substitute it back into the equation before I give that final answer. All right, number 2. Slope is undefined. Oh my goodness. So remember, oh no, no slope is a vertical line. We talked about that earlier in the lesson. A vertical line always has the formula x equals some number. Now look at your point. Which one of those is x? You're right. It's 2. And so we can just write this equation as x equals 2. And you're not going to have to do any more work than that. That's it. That's it. That's it. So vertical lines, x equals a number. Okay, let's look at 13. We're told the slope is a half. The x-intercept is -16. Okay, going to be in slope-intercept form. So let's start by putting in our 1/2 as a slope. So y equals 1/2 x plus b. Now we are not told b. Remember, we are told the x-intercept. But if we know the x-intercept, we know that's where it touches the x-axis. So y had to be 0. Now we know x and y. So in this equation, I'm going to put -16 for x. I'm going to put 0 for y. And we'll get to solve for b. Okay, so 1/2 times -16 is -8. And then I want you to add 8 to both sides. So you get that b is 8. Now remember, that's not my answer. Instead, my answer is the equation when I substitute the b in there. Okay. All right, a few more because I'm trying to give you one of every type. I want you to have one of every type so that you're prepared for anything that may come to you. So let's look at 14. 14 gives us 2 points. So notice we will have a point of -2,5, and we have a point at -4, -1. So what we need is the slope. So our first goal is to find the slope. Okay, so you're going to use that formula we talked about at the very beginning of our lesson. So my y2 is -1. My y1 is 5. My x2 is -4. And my x1 is -2. Okay, so on the top, just like we did earlier, we'll change that to subtraction by changing the sign of the next number. On the bottom, we'll do the same. So -1 plus -5 is -6. And -4 plus 2 is -2. So my slope is 3. Okay, let's substitute our slope then into our slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. I'm going to put 3 in place of the m. We don't know b. However, we do have a point. We have an x and a y. And friends, let me tell you, you could use either of the points here. You could use this as x and y, or you could use this as x and y. Either one works. So let's substitute 5 in for y, and we'll put -2 in for x. Okay, so 3 times -2 gives you -6. And then I want you to add 6 to both sides, and we get that b is 11. Remember, that's not our answer. Our answer is what we get when we put that b into our equation. And this is our final answer. Okay. All right, let's do one with standard form. Again, we find the slope first. So I've got to use my formula. Y2 is 5 minus Y1, which is also 5. X2 is 7 minus X1, -3. Use that, change your subtraction to addition by changing the sign of the next number on both the top and the bottom. And then on top, notice we have 5 plus -5, which is 0. And on bottom, 7 plus 3 is 10. So my slope here is 0. Now remember, we're going to go ahead and put in my 0 for m in my y equals mx plus b. And that just looks weird, friends. But that's okay. We have our x and y. We're going to use them. So I'll put 5 in for y. I'll put -3 in for x because I want to figure out what b is. 0 times -3, 0. So I've got that b is 5. So remember, I'm going to take my equation and I'm going to put that b value in there. Well, friends, it just is awkward to have that 0x there. So because it's just 0. And so we get y equals 5 is our equation, which seems odd, except that this is a slope of 0. And all lines with slope of 0 end up with y equals a number. All right, I got a couple more here coming from a chart. So when you look at a chart, you have to realize these are just ordered pairs, okay? So you've got 0, -2, and you've got 6, 0. We can work with this the same way we did these. The only thing that's different is that this one is very special because x is 0. That means this is the y-intercept, okay? So we still need our slope first. We'll do our y2 minus our y1 over our x2 minus x1. Change our signs just like we've done before. And on top, I get 2 over 6, which would be 1/3. Okay, now let's put that in our y equals mx plus b form. And let's use, I'm just going to use this one as my x and my y. Okay, so y is 0 and x is 6. So I get 1/3 times 6, which is 2. And then if I subtract 2 from both sides, you can see I'll get b equals -2. So remember, this now is my answer once I put my b value in the formula. Now, remember, our problem asks for standard form. So let's move this x term over to the left so we can get all the x's on one side. And then I've got to get rid of this fraction. So I'm going to multiply everything, and I'm going to do it by -3, okay? Because it'll take care of the fractions, but it'll also take care of the negative. So -3 times -1/3 is just 1. -3 times y, -3y. And -2 times -3 is 6. So now I have the equation, and it's in standard form. Okay, let's do one more like that. And this time I'm going to pick out 2 points. Friends, it doesn't matter which 2 you choose, just a heads up. You could choose any of them, but I'm going to choose the first 2. So 1, -8 and 3, -18. I'm going to find my slope first. So y2 is -18 minus y1 is -8. X2 is 3 and x1 is 1. So let's make the changes with our signs here. And on top, -18 plus +8 is -10. 3 plus -1 is 2. And I'll get -5 for my slope. All right, let's write that in our y equals mx plus b form. And now we'll use our x and our y to find our b. So we'll put in -8 for y, and I'll put in 1 for x. So it gives me negative 8 equals negative 5 plus b. Let's add 5 to both sides. So we get that b is negative 3. So let's write our b value in our equation. Y equals negative 5x minus 3 for our b value. And our problem did ask for slope-intercept form, so we'll leave it just like this. All right, friends. So I hope these examples have helped you. I've tried to give you one of every type, okay? So you can see all the different approaches from a graph, from points, from wording, all of those good things. And hopefully it's going to help you with your equations of lines and slope too.